Once upon a time, there was a family called the Whites. They lived in a small and cozy house in a peaceful village. The family consisted of Mr. White, his wife Mrs. White, and their young son Herbert. One day, an old friend of Mr. White, Sergeant Major Morris, paid them a visit. He had traveled far and wide and had many interesting tales to share. As they sat around the crackling fireplace, he recounted his adventures and revealed a peculiar artifact he had obtained during his travels. A monkey's paw! The monkey's paw was said to possess extraordinary powers, capable of granting 3 wishes to its possessor. However, Morris warned them that the paw had brought nothing but trouble and regret to those who dared to use it. Despite his cautionary words, the Whites' curiosity was piqued. As the evening drew to a close, Morris placed the monkey's paw in Mr. White's hand and urged him to make a wish. Mr. White hesitated, unsure of what to ask for. Finally, he wished for a sum of money that would clear their mortgage and secure their financial future. With a swift motion, Mr. White made his wish and the room fell into silence. The fire flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, Morris grabbed the paw from Mr. White's hand, declaring that it had brought nothing but sorrow to him in the past. Unfazed by Morris's warning, Mr. White dismissed his concerns and thanked him for the opportunity. The family retired to bed, filled with excitement and anticipation of what the next day might bring. Morning arrived, and the White family eagerly awaited the manifestation of their wish. Hours passed, and their hopes began to wane. Just as they were about to give up, a letter arrived. It contained devastating news. Their son Herbert had been caught in a terrible accident at his workplace and had lost his life. The family was overcome with grief and sadness. They blamed the monkey's paw for their misfortune and desperately wished for their son to come back to life. Days went by, and the emptiness in their home became unbearable. Late one night, they heard a knock on the door. Mrs. White, overwhelmed by desperation, rushed to open it. To her shock, she saw her son standing there, but he looked terrible and was disfigured from the accident. Mrs. White was terrified by her son's appearance. She realized that their desperate wish had been granted, but it wasn't the happy reunion they had hoped for. Herbert's presence brought only horror and despair to the house. Unable to bear seeing their son in such a tortured state, Mr. White, driven by fear and anguish, grabbed the monkey's paw one last time and made a final wish. For their son to rest in peace once again. As soon as he made the wish, their home became dark, and their resurrected son vanished. The paw had fulfilled their final wish, leaving the Whites in silence, feeling the heavy weight of their loss. From that day on, the monkey's paw was locked away and hidden, never to be used again. The Whites had learned a valuable lesson about the consequences of tampering with fate and the dangers of wanting too much. And so, the story of the monkey's paw reminds us that sometimes the things we desire the most can come at a great cost. And it's often better to be content with what we have rather than risking everything for our wishes.